Hi all, I have another fascinating game to show you from the Tradewise Gibraltar tournament 2018. Levon Aronian against Grandmaster Sethuraman. C4, the English opening. E6, G3, D5, and now Bishop G2, Knight F6, Knight F3, D takes C4. Now the Queen takes time out here for this check to get that pawn back pretty safely. Now C5, Knight E5, which puts pressure on B7 and creates the awkward response, Queen C8. And now this is a really fascinating move that I was really intrigued, what is it exactly doing? Sometimes we're told not to move a piece too many times in the opening, so this is a bit of a rule-breaking move. I wonder if you can guess it actually, if I give you 5 seconds to pause the video. Okay, I found it. I was intrigued what it was actually doing. I was actually wondering for some time. Is it supposed to be stopping Bishop D6? But actually there is a simple goal, I believe, that the idea of this move is to discourage, after say Bishop E7, it's to discourage the move Queen takes D7, because here, can you see what White would do? Okay, I think White can just take that, and remember B7 is targeted. So yeah, I think it basically reduces the recapture options here for a knight recapturing, leaving that Queen on C8. If the Queen is more central, then maybe, you know, it's supporting D4 square. So it's a subtle nuance which I found a little bit fascinating, that another Queen movement may be justified here for that reason. So anyway, Knight C6, Knight takes D7, so there's still this nice light square bishop without a counterpart. Knight takes there, because also another reason here you could argue is again White might just want to trade off queens as well, so there's another perk. And if Knight takes, maybe even White can consider doubling the pawns, just going for that more simplified position. So there's some perks for the Queen being on D3, so influencing the recapturers, the recapture process here. So Knight takes D7, Knight C3, Bishop E7, and now Queen B5, which I suspect it's nice for White to have after castles Bishop takes C6 to double the pawns. I suspect that's the reason, and it actually prompts A6 after this move, Queen B5 A6. Although engines seem to think that the double pawns are not a big deal, but maybe, you know, they are, because White can just target the double pawns quite easily later as a long-term plan. So Black's not that keen to have double pawns, so kicks the Queen. The Queen goes to A4 now. If the Queen goes to C4, that gives the option of Knight E5. And then maybe, you know, this is getting comfortable after Queen D7 for Black, if the Queen moves somewhere. So say Queen B3, Queen D7, or Knight D4. Yeah, it starts to look pretty awkward. So that tempo gain is avoided. But nevertheless, this is a large number of Queen moves in the opening. Knight D4, both sides now castle, D3, Knight B6, and the Queen just returns back to D1. So there were a lot of subtle Queen moves in this opening, which I found intriguing. Rook D8, Bishop D2, Queen D7, Rook C1, Rook AC8, and yeah, it has been, it seems tempting for Black to consider C4, but this is ruled out a little bit now with B3, H6, King H1, Knight D5, and White takes on D5, E3, Knight C6. Now Queen H5, so White has a certain amount of light square pressure here. Queen D6, and now F4, gaining space on the king side. A5, A4 fixing Black's queenside intentions for a moment. Rook B8, and now E4. So not minding actually this backward pawn on the semi-open file, because in exchange these light squares look pretty dangerous. b6, and now g4, very, very aggressive stuff for g5. So the downside of the backward d pawn here is compensated by what seems to be quite a vicious storm brewing to attack the black king. Knight d4, bishop c3, and now this seems like a panicky move, f5. There might have been better defensive tries. I guess the idea was simply just to try and blockade on the dark squares, and this pawn wouldn't be that significant. I guess that was the intuitive idea, but I think engines suggest other alternatives here. But it is a bit tricky because there are threats which seem to be quite scary. So you can understand this response to try and get a grip on the position, especially this d4 knight. It's strongly reinforced. But after rook g1, there is an immediate tactical issue, which is just ignored, you might find, in a shocking manner. I don't know if this is like a clear blunder or not, or black's overthought things. Rook e8, it seems to be just giving up the h6 pawn. If we had king h8 here, white can just build up an attack by doubling the rooks quite simply. And there's actually a very simple plan here. If we have this position, there's a very simple plan to exert more pressure on g7, which is just bishop e1 and challenge that defender of g7. And this is going to be very nasty. Black has to do desperate things after. So perhaps black didn't like that and played this. Is it a deliberate pawn sacrifice? It just seems very, very dangerous to allow this position. Rook c e1 now, reinforcing the e4 bishop. It seems engines believe actually that in this position rook c2 is possible, because if knight takes, this quickly gets the rook over here, because if knight takes, can you see what white could play if I give you 5 seconds? Okay, the crushing rook takes g7 is possible here. So for example like that. So it seems that nifty rook c2 was quite optimal just to get to the g file. Nevertheless, this is still really strong for white after rook e1. And rook e3, the game ends here anyway. There's menacing threats like rook h3. I'll give you an example of this position if black continued. King f7, check, queen going back to seal off the king from escaping. And now white can just build up, for example, like this, with check winning material, because there's going to be rook h3 if the king moves over to h8, or just winning material. That's just an example, one example. If rook f e8, for example, here there's rook h3, it's just far too dangerous. If black has to sack the exchange, it's just too good for white. So it just seems like a winning position. But I just found the game, actually I found the game pretty mysterious at first for the opening. But the more you sort of look at the nuances, the more they kind of get justified. There's a very fine level of cost-benefit moving the queen with these subtle movements, but they did certain things, basically on certain conditions to influence black's options of recapturing. Very subtle stuff, which is why I kind of enjoyed it after understanding it for a bit, and I hope you did as well. And yeah, black's pawn sack seemed to not work out very well there to try and defend. Okay, comments, questions, likes, shares appreciated. Thanks very much.